It's Tuesday, October 18th. Kamikaze-style drones hit Kyiv. We start here. Russia's latest attacks targeting civilians and Ukraine's energy infrastructure.
They have hit critical infrastructure, knocking out power and a part of Moscow's kind of campaign of terror.
How Ukraine is fighting back. The changing landscape of the midterm elections.
8 out of the 10 most likely decisive seats are in these suburban areas.
The key places and races that will decide control of the House. And access to hearing aids shifts to over-the-counter.
We don't think twice about buying Tylenol. You don't need a prescription for that, right? But then for other products, there's a gray area.
How a new FDA rule could save you thousands. From ABC News, this is Start Here. I'm Michelle Franzen. Hey, Brad's off today. I'll be taking you through the news this morning. We start in Ukraine, where Russia launched another wave of unmanned drone attacks early yesterday morning in Kyiv, hitting residential areas, killing civilians, and damaging critical infrastructure in the region, with electricity cut in hundreds of towns and villages. It's the second time in a week Russia has targeted Ukraine's capital. Last week, Russian missiles hit during the morning commute. ABC's Britt Clinett is on the ground in Kyiv to update us on the latest attacks. Britt, these fresh strikes in the capital with the drone attacks, these so-called kamikaze drones, where did they hit and how many of the drones did Russia use that were supplied by Iran?
So from what we know, at least 28 headed for Kyiv itself, and all but 5 were shot down. They were intercepted. From what we understand, they were all Iranian-made kamikaze or self-destroying or suicide drones, however you want to describe them. Iran denies that it's supplying Russia with these drones, but the US saying the proof is extensive and that it actually violates a UN resolution.
Russia deepening an alliance with Iran is something the whole world should, especially those in the region and across the world, frankly, should be seen as a profound threat.
So though Western officials say they're not having a huge impact on the battlefield, these drones, they have hit critical infrastructure, knocking out power and a part of Moscow's kind of campaign of terror. Let me just paint a picture for you. We woke up at around 7 a.m., called into the bunker, and this is deja vu from last Monday, just only an hour earlier, and we're told there are strikes, this time drone strikes.
There's a strong sense of urgency here as emergency workers are frantically searching through the debris of that building.
So we go to one of the sites where emergency workers are frantically searching through rubble of an obliterated building looking for survivors.
Here!
Half of that apartment block, it was just blown away. I mean, rooms sliced into halves. As people living there, you know, they would have been getting ready for their day. They would have been having their morning coffee and getting ready for the week. Firemen were able to pull out several people, but 4 people were killed, including a pregnant woman. She was 6 months pregnant, and her husband, too.
Again, civilian targets.
Yeah, exactly, civilian targets. And this is what's so heartbreaking about being here on the ground and witnessing it. You see that these are real people, these are innocent lives.
Britt, you spoke with the city's mayor, Vitaly Klitschko. He expressed anger and determination after the initial drone strikes. Are residents also acting with that same resolve as they head into the 9th month of this war?
You know, they absolutely are. He said that residents are angry, but they're not scared.
Angry and want to defend our houses, defend our families.
These, again, are attacks on civilians, like we said, on families, and he says it makes it a clear case of war crime.
They killed civilians right now, and we see the everyday terror attack. It's the true face of this war.
He said the city is prepared for all kinds of scenarios, whatever, comes their way, and that they will remain defiant in the face of this Russian terror that's been unleashed on his city, his hometown. He said to me, it's personal.
You also mentioned that shelling has increased not just in the capital, but across Ukraine again. That includes Zaporizhia, where, of course, Europe's largest nuclear plant is occupied still by Russian troops. So what is the concern there for the power grid?
Yeah, so there were Russian attacks on the Zaporizhia power plant again, which disconnected the last line of the power grid. But Ukraine says that Russians have changed their tactics and are trying to blackmail the world by attacking this power plant. But in Ukraine, it also has huge and really immediate implications on people's lives here.
People freezing in the winter. Less people do it without electricity.
The power plant attacks are seriously threatening to interrupt the energy supply, impacting heating, water, electricity ahead of the cold winter months just around the corner. And it gets bitterly cold here in Ukraine.
And we know Russia continues to have its own problems and setbacks, including a plane crash into a residential area further south in Russia. What happened?
So what we know is that this happened in Russia near the Ukrainian border, a military warplane crashing into a residential area during what Russia says was a training exercise, and it sparked a massive fire that engulfed an apartment building. What we do know is that 6 people at least were killed, but that death toll is expected to climb because nearly 24 have been wounded, and authorities there in Russia blame engine failure for that crash.
This really shows that Russia cannot figure out how to turn around the ground offensive and now counteroffensive by the Ukrainians, and they resorted to these type of terrorist-type tactics with these drones.
Ukraine says that these attacks on innocent people show that Putin is desperate, that his position is weakening because of the losses he's faced on the battlefield in the south and in the east, and that he's increasingly now resorting to these terror tactics.
And again, more civilians on the front lines as this war plays out. Britt, thank you.
Thanks, Michelle.
Next up on Start Here, the midterm elections are in the home stretch. A look at the races that will decide the balance of the House and Senate. We're back in a bit.
This is ABC News Live.
The crush of families here in Poland.
At refugee centers
in Putin's Russia.
On the ground in Ukraine.
Close to the front line.
Here at the White House.
Destructive
Cat 4 storm.
Here along I-5.
Boston is in the bullseye.
Let's go. We made it.
ABC News Live, America's #1 streaming news. Anytime, anywhere. Streaming 24/7 straight to you for free.
Thank you for making ABC News Live America's #1 streaming news.
Bring them on.
If only there was a place in the morning to start my day. With a smile, somewhere to help me get in the know. A place that's spectacular as well. Me.
I think we might know a place, right, guys?
Bring your friends. Oh, wait, there is.
Good morning, America.
GMA, 7A, every day. Boom. Boom. Boom.
Good morning, Michael.
Good morning, Robin. Good morning, America. How are you?
Boom. Now that's how you start your day, people.
All right, here we go. You ready? Let's do it.
Yes, it's the show America wants and America needs right now.
This is What Would You Do? Let's go. How are you?
How cute.
Yeah.
So what will you be watching Saturdays on ABC News Live?
What would you do?
Hey, I guess I just found out.
The What Would You Do Marathon, 12 to 6 Eastern, every Saturday on ABC News Live.
My favorite show.
As of today, in a big way, we have inaugurated abcnews.com.
A lot has changed in our world since Peter made that announcement. But what hasn't changed is the commitment to groundbreaking reporting and innovation at abcnews.com. And here's to everything ahead.
This is ABC News Live Prime.
Thanks so much for streaming with us.
Live reporting, breaking news, exclusives, award-winning, powerful, eye-opening. ABC News Live Prime with Lindsay Davis, streaming weeknights.
You never know what you're going to get on this show. That's all I'm going to tell you.
Yes, Whoopi! This mic on? Can you hear me out there?
Behind the scenes is always a better show.
Absolutely, absolutely.
That's what people don't see during the commercial break.
Right, they don't.
What happened?
I had no idea really what I was getting myself into.
That day that we walked out, I treasure that day. I couldn't sit there.
You're doing good, Joy. You're doing good. Oh, yeah, baby.
It was crazy.
Behind the Table. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
Admit it. These days, what you need to know
seems to change just about every day.
What is it that you really want to know, need to know?
To help you not just get through your day,
but to make the most of it. Feel smarter.
Feel better.
Feel happier.
Well, how about a third hour of Good Morning America?
GMA 3, what you need to know. Now streaming on ABC News Live.
It's all about you.
With
With so much at stake in our world right now, we wanted to thank you for your trust and for making ABC News America's #1 news.
And thank you for making ABC News Live America's #1 streaming news.
With so much at stake, so much on the line, more Americans turn here than any other newscast. ABC News World News Tonight with David Muir, America's #1 most watched newscast across all of television.
America is being poisoned with fentanyl, and we don't even know it.
Just heard my wife screaming. She told me they had just died.
50 to 100 times more potent than morphine.
Keep breathing, come on.
It's poison. It's pure poison.
A few grains of salt worth of fentanyl will kill you.
Just my agency has seized enough to kill the entire country.
ABC News Live presents Poisoned, America's Fentanyl Crisis. The powerful series, streaming free on ABC News Live.
'Tis time.
The real monster fun begins.
Here they come. Why was I cursed with such idiot sisters?
Just lucky, I guess.
Sounds creepy. We're home.
31 Nights of Halloween. Watch all October on Freeform.
We are now just 3 weeks away from the midterm elections when voters head to the polls to choose local and state leaders, along with U.S. Senate and House seats, and also weigh in on a host of measures.
Why did you come out to vote?
I didn't want to stand in a long line, and I wanted to make sure I had a chance to vote.
Early voting is already underway in some states, including in the battleground state of Georgia.
I'm the person that created the online voter registration system in the state.
Last night, Republican Governor Brian Kemp and Democratic challenger Stacey Abrams squared off for their first debate, where ballot access and abortion rights were center stage.
He has weakened gun laws and flooded our streets. He has weakened our privacy rights and women's rights.
And Democrat Raphael Warnock and GOP nominee Herschel Walker are locked in a tight race that could determine control of the Senate. But what about the balance of the House? Senior election analyst for 538 and ABC News political contributor Nathaniel Rakich is here to tell us how these key races are shaping up across the country and where. Nathaniel, it's not your typical midterm election this round. Turnout is expected to be higher than in the past due to some of the major races in these battleground states that will determine which party controls the House and maybe the Senate. For a long time, we heard Republicans were going to take over enough seats to flip the House, no problem. But what does recent data tell you now?
Yeah, so we at 538 in our forecast for the House, we currently give Republicans a 71 in 100 chance of taking control, which of course is pretty good, but it's not a sure thing. Democrats have a 29 in 100 chance of taking control.
When looking at the districts that you were focusing on, it's not really in the typical areas of what we've been hearing. Which area will voters have the biggest impact on changing control of the House?
So we at 538 have our forecast model, and we simulate the election literally 40,000 times. And from that, we can see which House district was kind of the decisive House district the most often. And some of the districts that again and again come up as being the most decisive, and when I say decisive, I mean kind of the one that clinches a majority for either Democrats or Republicans, include the Iowa's 3rd district. This is obviously a swing district in and around Des Moines, Iowa.
Between the infrastructure bill and this new Inflation Reduction Act, we are creating millions of good-paying jobs across this country, and they're starting right here in Iowa.
This features a Democratic incumbent, Sidney Axne, who is going up against a Republican state senator, Zach Nunn.
We've knocked on over 100,000 doors in this 3rd district, and what we hear overwhelmingly is the economy and inflation are having a devastating impact on people.
Another district that looks like it could be decisive is North Carolina's 13th district.
We've gotten small wins for clean air and water in our state, and I'm optimistic that this is just the beginning.
This is a new district that was created by redistricting, so it doesn't have an incumbent, but the Democratic candidate is a state senator, Wiley Nickel, and the Republican candidate is a younger rising star named Bo Hines.
I'm running for Congress because we need tough-minded America First patriots in Washington, D.C. that are willing to fight back against the radical, socialist, leftist politicians like AOC, Ilhan Omar, and Nancy Pelosi.
And this district is interesting because it is literally bipartisanship, the exact middle median district in the House. So basically, you can't get more of a bellwether than that. Looking at the 10 districts that are most likely to be the decisive district in the House, Iowa's 3rd district, North Carolina's 13th district, New York's 22nd district, Oregon's 5th district, so really all over the country. One thing, though, that they do have in common is that they tend to be in suburban or exurban areas. So 8 out of the 10 most likely decisive seats are in these suburban areas. And of course, we know this in politics today. Cities are increasingly solidly Democratic. The countryside is increasingly solidly Republican, and that leaves the suburbs and the exurbs to be the place where House majorities are won or lost.
And along with that redistricting, who's motivated to turn out this midterm election? Are we seeing more voters across the board, or are more younger voters engaged in this midterm cycle than what they have been before? And are issues driving voters out?
Yeah, I mean, the short answer is that, everybody is energized, or at least more energized than usual, right? You always see patterns like older voters do tend to be more reliable at turning out than younger voters, for example. But you see in polls asking kind of, how excited are you to vote? How enthusiastic are you compared to past years? And that is very high. That's kind of almost at 2018 levels. And in 2018, of course, we had among the highest midterm turnout that we have had in many years. And then in 2020, we also had a very high turnout presidential cycle. So I think we are now in this era of perhaps high turnout elections, which that aspect is good for democracy. The issue is maybe what's motivating them is higher partisanship and polarization, which wouldn't be so good, of course. But basically, in terms of the issues that are getting Americans out to vote, generally speaking, they say they are most concerned about the economy and inflation.
Trump had his faults, yeah. But we're paying $1.99 for a gallon of gas. We're paying 99 cents for a dozen eggs.
President Biden tried, and unfortunately, OPEC had a different, mindset on gas prices. And so, once again, we're going to watch them climb up potentially for a little bit.
But you also see some of them who are motivated by issues like abortion, of course.
If my granddaughter doesn't have reproductive freedom, she can't use birth control. I mean, it's like, what are they thinking?
On the Republican side, issues like public safety and crime and immigration are driving them to the polls as well.
The border, I mean, do we really know who I was coming across that border? I mean, I don't know. I feel sorry for them, but after a while, isn't there a limit?
Now, we've talked about the House and the seats that are on the line there. What about the Senate? Is that also in jeopardy of flipping?
Yeah, absolutely. So Democrats are actually favored in the Senate, according to the 538 forecast. They have about a 2/3 chance of holding on there. But that, of course, means that Republicans have a 1/3 chance. So, if you think about the odds of rolling a die and getting either a 1 or a 2, those are the odds that Republicans have to take over the Senate.
They want to force the state of Nevada and other states like Nevada to limit women's freedoms.
So some of the decisive races in the Senate, of course, include Nevada, where Democratic incumbent Senator Catherine Cortez Masto is going up against Republican Adam Laxalt.
And it was always better left return to the states. It's because it was put at the federal level that made it such a divisive, highly charged issue.
That is probably the closest race in the country right now in the Senate. But Republicans also have a path to flipping Georgia.
What is your opinion of Herschel Walker? Do you support Walker?
I look at both of them as very flawed candidates.
Which features Democratic incumbent Senator Raphael Warnock against former football player Herschel Walker, who, of course, has been beset by scandals and controversies recently. But he still has a chance of winning.
He has turned the page on his life and so forth. So what he stands for basically lines up a little more with myself.
And Nathaniel, for you, polling this cycle, has it also changed a lot, or are there still so many unknowns that weren't there before?
Yeah, I think that one of the challenges we're seeing with polling this cycle is that it isn't quite as thorough as maybe it was certainly in the presidential cycle of 2020 and even in 2018. So for example, in 2018, we had a lot of really granular district level polls in the House, and we're not seeing that in a lot of these key races that I mentioned earlier. So for example, a place like Iowa's 3rd District or Arizona's 2nd District, that's one district, the Arizona 2nd, where that is one of the most likely seats to be the decisive seat in the House. And we're only aware of one poll that's been conducted there all cycle. So we could be in a situation where we're maybe flying blind a little bit. A lot of our predictions, us at 538, about what's going to happen in these districts are based on kind of more fundamental factors like partisanship and candidate quality rather than on the ground data. And, that increases the uncertainty.
And with these remaining weeks, we know that almost anything can happen. Nathaniel, thanks.
You're welcome.
An estimated 30 million American adults have either mild to moderate hearing loss. For many of those millions, access to a hearing aid has been out of reach or unaffordable. But this week, hearing aids are now available over the counter for the first time in the U.S.
These devices are intended for adults only with mild to moderate hearing loss that is self-perceived. So this is a brand new avenue.
Under a new rule by the FDA, Americans will no longer need a doctor's prescription and can turn instead to pharmacies and retail chains like Walmart to get tested and buy hearing aids at a fraction of the cost. ABC's Sony Salzman is here to tell us more about all these new options. Sony, the Biden administration has called this a game changer as access remains a challenge and a quite expensive one at that. First of all, help us understand what the hurdles were to our system and how this program helps clear the way.
Yeah, thank you so much. I mean, as you said, starting this week for the first time ever, patients are going to be able to go into stores and purchase a hearing aid. Now, previously, the hurdles included you had to go to a doctor. You effectively had to get a prescription for a hearing aid. And then even once you jumped through those hoops, you still had to pay a lot of money. So, for example, hearing aids can cost thousands of dollars. One FDA estimate found that this ruling could save customers $3,000 per pair of hearing aids. So this could be a really meaningful difference for a lot of people who need them.
Wow. Thousands of dollars is a hefty price tag for Americans any day, even more so when budgets are really stretched thin. So how does this program work for Americans, and what are their choices?
People will be able to go into stores like Walmart, Walgreens, and they will be able to get fitted and get a hearing aid that works for them. There will be choices. They can do price shopping online. Now, something that's really important to note here is that a lot of people with mild to moderate hearing loss don't wear hearing aids. It is associated with a lot of health benefits for people who start using them, and we know that not enough people who need them are wearing them. One estimate found that 30% of people over 70 who could benefit were using them, so a minority of people, right?
Wow.
And for younger people, it's even less.
I actually waited almost 7 years before it became such a significant issue with my job, sitting in meetings when I couldn't hear what everyone was saying.
That's a big problem because the health risks of having hearing loss are not just like an inconvenience, right? It contributes to stress, and there are some studies, in fact, really robust studies, that link hearing loss to dementia. So it really is important that people who experience hearing loss go seek hearing aids, and it can really help improve your quality of life.
And is this transition to over-the-counter just taking out the middleman? Was there a problem when it came to access, like we've seen with other medical costs or prescription costs?
Yeah, well, I think there are a lot of medical products, medical devices, and pharmaceutical products where there is this debate about benefits and risks. Is this something that's safe for people to use over the counter, right? We don't think twice about buying Tylenol. You don't need a prescription for that, right? But then for other products, there's a gray area. There's a big debate about, for example, birth control being available over the counter. Do you need to be consulted by a doctor? And so I think that the assessment here was that the benefit that you get from consulting with a doctor, which is so real, like talking to an audiologist if you have hearing loss is so beneficial for so many reasons. But for some people, the risks of not doing that don't outweigh the rewards of having easier access.
It is another issue, hearing, very important for all of us. And when you take that and find a solution, it can really change your life. Sony, thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
And one last thing, cue the fans. Their hits like butter made teens swoon all around the globe. Now K-pop sensation BTS is causing another stir. The band's management company announced members are on hiatus until at least 2025, so they can start serving their mandatory military duty in South Korea.
오늘 공연 너무 즐거웠고 감사합니다. 사랑합니다.
Chin, who turns 30 this year, is the oldest member and will lead the way. He told fans last weekend at a concert it was the last concert scheduled for the band.
Smooth like butter, like a criminal undercover.
Members of the band already announced this past summer they were going to take a break to pursue solo projects as the debate over serving played out.
Military service is compulsory in South Korea. Men required to serve in the Army for 18 months by the time they're 28.
Mandatory military service for South Korean men ranges in age from 18 to 28, but a revised law in 2020 allowed pop artists to delay service if they received the Order of Cultural Merits Award from South Korea's president. That created controversy because BTS members were the only male K-pop artist who received the honor. It allowed Chin to delay his service date until now.
The band's record label saying BTS wants to respect the needs of the country, adding, the time is now.
Managers say he'll enlist after his solo project drops in October. Other members haven't released details on their service schedules yet, which means for now, it's a for this star power group, leaving fans wanting more. And that's where we leave it on this Tuesday. I'm Michelle Franzen. Brad's back tomorrow. I'll see you next time.
More Americans choose ABC News, America's #1 news source.
All right, here we go. You ready? Let's do it.
Yes.